I'm Rachel Humphrey with It's Personal Stories, a hospitality podcast, and we are a nonprofit dedicated to empowering personal success within the hospitality industry. I'm very excited to be joined on the show today by Keith Pierce of Sonesta International Hotels. Keith, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you. Thanks for the invite. Looking forward to the conversation.
I am excited to jump right in. One of the things I love about the hospitality industry is that every leader can have a different journey, one that's very unique to his or her circumstances and situation. So tell us a little bit about your path to leadership, maybe if there were any pivotal moments along the way, but really how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'll start from the early process, but I won't touch on all the stops along the way. But my father was the publisher of Lodging Hospitality for 25 years. And when I got out of high school, he said, "What do you think you want to do?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And he said, "Then why don't you go to hotel school, hospitality school?" So, of course, ended up in hotel school, jumped out of hotel school right at the property level. I'm a New Yorker, and so I spent my summer internships in New York City at the New York Hilton and the Sheraton Center and the Roosevelt Hotel. But after graduation, went to the Waldorf Astoria and had a great kind of 1 year out of college internship there, kind of working at the property level, but quickly figured out that I really wanted to get into the corporate side of the business. And so in 1986, I had the opportunity to jump out a kind of property level and team up with a gentleman that many will know, Joe McInerney. And Joe McInerney at the time was the president of Sheraton, which was owned by ITT here in Boston, which is where I am now on State Street. And the Pritzker family started a small little extended stay brand called Hawthorne Suites. And so I was fortunate enough to jump in there with Joe at a very young age, franchising business model, and kick off Hawthorne Suites as a new brand. And so I did that for about 4 or 5 years and started to meet some people in the industry. And one individual in particular was Greg Plank, who unfortunately has passed away earlier last year. But he ended up leaving and joining this company called HFS in New Jersey around the 1990 timeframe. And I'm from Long Island. My wife and I wanted to go back to Long Island from Boston. And so I moved back to Long Island and I jumped over to HFS working as a director of marketing. And at the time, HFS owned Ramada and Howard Johnson. And of course, HFS was the precursor to what is today Wyndham. And there were only about maybe 800 hotels, 900 hotels, 2 brands. And little did I know at that point in time that 27 years later, I would catch this ride, which was basically the build out of HFS to Cendant to then Wyndham. And over the course of that 27-year period of time, had a front row seat on mass scaling, acquired a lot of brands. Most of the brands with Wyndham are acquired, with the exception of Wingate, which is homegrown, and watched that business grow and then ultimately became a leader in that business to help the business grow, frankly, in part to what it is today and is to one of the largest hotel companies in the world, but just a big franchising machine. And I ultimately didn't set out to become a franchise executive, but between the Hawthorne Suites experience and then the Wyndham experience, the HFS and Wyndham experience, I spent the better part of 3 decades learning the art of large-scale franchising. And so that was just a remarkable opportunity. Met so many people that came through that organization over the course of time. Had the opportunity to work with 5 CEOs over a 27-year period of time, right? Because they were all there about 5 years, give or take. All incredible leaders, different styles. An incredible opportunity to have, again, the opportunity to watch these individuals come in and take the company to the next leg of the journey in terms of whatever was facing us at that point in time. Left in 15, all great friends there, great circumstances, and jumped into a small partnership that kicked up with some fellow friends Daniel Delomo, who more recently has been named president of Sage Hospitality, another great company based in Denver. And we started to do this little kind of partnership deal where we were making strategic investments in hospitality, restaurant concepts and hotel concepts. And then had a chance to look at the Red Line hotel business in 2019. It was a business that had been asset light thesis, had built it up to about 800 hotels or so, 8 different brands, but they ran into some challenges, and the public company board set out to do a new CEO search. And so in 2019, I set out to interview for that position and met with the board a couple times. And on my way back from the second interview, this thing called COVID hit. And it was probably February of 20, give or take, in that time frame. And so they timed the search out. And so all of us, I was sitting home wondering what this COVID thing was in March, April, May, June, right into 2020, the thick of COVID. And then while that search had timed out, John Murray, Adam Portnoy, the REIT SVC, they were in the process of taking back hundreds of hotels from Marriott and IHG and taking them back into the REIT and flagging them Sonesta. And so during the pandemic, Sonesta had grown from about 40 hotels to about 280 hotels, literally overnight. And I knew John Murray from my Wyndham days because Wyndham had actually done a 20-pack of the SVC REIT hotels. At the time, it was called HPT. And so when I was running the Americas for Wyndham, our team was supporting the SVC assets. And so I knew John. So anyway, long story short, I reached out to John and said, hey, you just took back all these hotels, but Sonesta doesn't franchise. I was interviewing for the CEO job, but now I'm actually trying to buy the company and do a public to private transaction. And we can buy the RLH business. It's 100% franchising. And then we can wrap franchising around Sonesta, and we can start to franchise the Sonesta brands pretty quickly because we'll basically buy a in-place franchise company. And he liked the idea, and I came up here to Boston and met with Adam Portnoy in the middle of COVID and presented the investment thesis to him. He approved a certain dollar amount to bid on the company, public company, so it was a shareholder proxy exercise. And in March of 21, we were successful in winning the bid. I went to Denver. We took over the company. The next day, we made it private. And then here we are now 5 years later, 1,000 hotels, 900 franchise hotels, 70 managed hotels, a handful of hotels that we own. I share that with you because I do think that it'll lead into some of the discussion that we'll have today together around networking, around relationships, around opportunity, around changing environments, and talk about a changing environment. COVID was pretty severe, certainly for you and I, probably the most volatile period of time in our careers. 2019 was the best year in the hospitality business. 2020 was the worst year in the hospitality business. That's a pretty extreme change in what was a 90-day period of time from December to March. So anyway, it's been a remarkable journey, just passing 40 years now, and having this opportunity to, in essence, create another brand in Sonesta. Sonesta's been around for a long time, but not in its current form. Having this opportunity to, in essence, launch a new brand in my career again is really just a special opportunity.
Well, Keith, I appreciate the journey because you're right. You have touched on so many topics that lead to great leadership conversations. One of them I want to talk about is the evolution of your leadership. I actually met you for the first time at a time of Ascendant Wyndham, and then we collaborated again at the RLHC and Sonesta days. And I think a lot about the hospitality industry and, quite frankly, how many people have had so many different roles within the same company that then becomes another company and so forth. And I'm curious, in looking at your leadership, how do you keep your leadership not only fresh, but evolving when you're staying with one company for a long period of time, but having a lot of different roles within that company? but then also growing from one role to the next. How do you make sure that you don't get stagnant in any of those opportunities?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think a couple things, and I'll use Wyndham as the base example, just because it was 27 years, right? And I started as a director, and when I left, I was EVP of the Americas. But another good example of what this industry can provide in terms of opportunity to come in as a relatively young individual, to stay for 2.5 decades, and to leave at one of the executive levels of the largest hotel company. Really a remarkable run. And in that particular example, look, we were growing very fast. At one point in time, we were buying a new hotel company. Wyndham, they're my competitors, so I should say them. My friends. Every 8 months, a new hotel company was coming into at the time HFS and then Send It. And so it was creating a lot of opportunity for good, talented, hungry, energetic individuals. But I will say that one of the things that really helped me, and but probably not too different from many others that have been given opportunities, is having a good sponsor, a good executive sponsor. If there are individuals that are above you and they see early on that maybe this is an individual that you can give them more and then they'll succeed with that, and then you can give them more and then they'll succeed with that, and so on and so forth. But they give you an opportunity. Someone's got to give you an opportunity, right? Someone's got to take the risk to say, okay, maybe a little young, but let's put them in a president position. I'll give you a good example in my journey, which I think was one of the pivotal points of accelerating some of my broadened responsibilities. So I'd mentioned that on the Wyndham side, the businesses were acquired. The one that was homegrown was Wingate. And so I moved off of the Ramada business onto the Wingate business as the vice president of marketing. We basically started from scratch and created a brand, literally from scratch. Logo, all new construction brand, prototype standards, uniform franchise offering circulars, all of the things that come with growing a brand. And soon thereafter, 2 years, the CEO left. And so one of the executives at the point in time gave me the opportunity to be the president of Wingate. Relatively small brand at the time. Maybe it was 80 properties or so that we had grown it to. But that then led to getting a second brand. And then that led to getting a third brand. And then that led to a title change, which was president of the Americas versus just the president of one brand. And then that led to getting all the brands for the division. And then that led to a title. So it was an individual that gave me that first opportunity that pivoted me from really a marketing department to a leadership department. And I can give that same example, and I'll use John Murray as an example, right? He saw the vision, he saw the opportunity, he gave me the opportunity to have a discussion with his ownership and his executive group in the Portnoy family and RMR and SVC. And we were able to put together, during a pandemic, what is today the 8th largest hotel company. Frankly, remarkable, right? The pandemic, everyone was playing defense, and we emerged as a real competitor in the space. And it's a very challenging space, right? You're talking about some of the greatest hotel companies in the world have been at it for 50 years. We're competing for not only consumers, but also obviously for new property count, additional property count. The pivotal points to me of having a sponsor, having somebody that gives you an opportunity. And I've taken that, and then I've applied that to my leadership skills. And I've got a couple of individuals that we acquired with Red Lion. We acquired those individuals. I saw opportunity in those individuals. Those individuals are with us today. Their roles continue to expand and continue to grow as we grow as a company.
It's such a great point first about relationships, and we'll certainly talk some more about that, but also that you need to have people that support you and elevate you and your vision and your capabilities, because we can do all of the work ourselves, but we need someone to recognize it and help us take that first next step. And I think that's great advice of making sure to find someone who you align with that then is going to champion you whenever they can. You mentioned earlier that during your time at Wyndham Sundance HFS, you were serving under 5 different CEOs. And that's a great topic to talk about now with so many people in the hospitality industry, where if you stay at any one place long enough, there are always going to be leadership team changes. And you have to build trust very quickly. You have to have very effective communication very quickly. What insights would you share or advice would you share with others about either ways that you think you successfully manage transition or adapt to new teams, given the really short time frame, but the importance of building those new relationships quickly?
Yeah, the only constant is change, right? And we know that it doesn't just have to be leadership change. It could be all types of change, which we've been going through some organizational kind of design changes ourselves to be more asset right, with some asset sales and shrinking our management company and growing our franchising company. So change comes in all different forms and fashion. It's not just the leaders. It can be the change of the company landscape. And so change is always a constant. But that said, it's always daunting. And, what I have found is that when the new CEOs, if we just use CEOs as an example, when they come into typically the larger companies, it's likely that they're going to rely on some of their prior team members that they had worked with and look for opportunities to bring them into the organization. And not that they come in and clean house, it's just that they've got individuals they're comfortable working with. And if you're in an executive position and the CEO comes in, then there's always this chance that an individual could align more with the CEO from their prior past experience. So I always knew every time that there was a CEO change, that there was a high probability that there could be change at the second level and the third level and maybe even the fourth level. But what I found is that change creates opportunity. I can't tell you how many times there were changes in my life, in my corporate career, that when I was younger, it created an enormous amount of stress and anxiety. As I got older, I view it as opportunity, because every time there is a change, it's just how you decide to handle that change. The other thing is leadership may change, but let's just call it mid-management can stay pretty stable, right, throughout all these changes. And at the end of the day, you need to be respected and trusted from the individuals you work shoulder to shoulder with. Because when the new leadership comes in, they're going to ask around. Yeah. How's that person to work with? What's the flexibility? How do they handle change? And if they're not getting the answers they like, they're going to make quick decisions.
I love the change creates opportunity too. If you channel that stress or that anxiety into an opportunity for growth, into an opportunity to show what you are capable of, make yourself an indispensable resource, that's also going to be a huge advantage to anybody coming in to the company or to the new role. You mentioned a couple of times the importance of the relationships you had originally, the ones you have with John, those that you are building with some of the people on your team. And one of the interesting things to me in the industry has always been that you and I may build relationships or network very differently, but we can both have these very significant, important to us networks. How do you tailor building relationships or networking to your personality? What do you think are some of the character traits you have that you lean into when you're trying to identify and build genuine relationships?
Yeah, I do think that there is a nuance and a difference between kind of networking and then strong, long-term relationships. That said, always having a minute to listen, always being respectful of the fact that everybody's time is important. And you could be at a trade show, you could be at a reception, you could be at any of the many places that that we're so fortunate to attend during the course of our careers. And if when someone comes up to you and they want to have a discussion with you at any level, take the time to listen. They have goals and objectives. They have aspirations. They have sought you out for some reason, and be respectful of that. Be at least what I have found to build strong reputation is be true to your word. If you tell them that you're going to take their card and connect them with somebody in your company, if you tell them that you're going to take their call, if you tell them that you're going to answer their email, if you tell them that you're going to take a meeting, do what you say, be forward about it, and deliver on it. And I have just found that be honest, be sincere. Ultimately, you want people to work for you. You want them to work for you. Like they want to, you want them to say, hey, I want to go work for Keith. You don't want to tell people to work for you. And that starts to spread in the industry. Just as, hey, that person's a solid person. Give them a call. They'll help you out. I can't tell you how many emails that I get from people around the industry that say, hey, could you connect me with that person or this person, or can we talk to that person? Take the time to do it. So yeah, networking was one thing, knowing a lot of people and shaking hands and making some connections here and there. Long lasting, most of my best friends are industry friends. We've hired so many people on the franchise side of the business, and I've never hired a search firm to hire anybody.
I love the combination of both being a good listener, but also being a person of your word. I think those two things have led you to having some of the strongest relationships in the industry, and they continue to flourish, as you mentioned, in a lot of different ways. Since I have known you, you have always been heavily involved with associations and other industry organizations. I'm curious in this one about, in our corporate roles, we learn a lot of skills. We have a lot of professional growth. There's a lot of things we need to be successful in those roles. But when we tend to get involved with boards, associations, nonprofits, we have the ability to build a different set of skills or different muscles. Talk a little bit about getting involved with associations and some of the things you think you've learned from those roles that might be different than you've learned from your corporate roles with the hotel brands.
Yeah, H&LA is where I probably have spent the most time, just in terms of participating on subcommittees and executive committees. Certainly, and of course, your background experience has always been involved with the HOA, but that's a slightly different type of board structure and subcommittee structure and the like. With H&LA, for me, it always gives me an opportunity to get grounded in the industry outside of our business, Capitol Hill, politics, all the things that happen at the state and federal level, for sure. And so by being part of the association, you always have an opportunity to step away from your own business, close the door in the executive meetings, and get a better feel for what's going on with the industry, more from a macro standpoint, political standpoint, tourism standpoint. And again, the association is our association, right? The AHO Association is the industry association, primarily for the Asian Americans. And if we don't give back to it, if they're not individuals participating and give back to it, then it's not as strong as it could possibly be. So having the voice of a lot of the executives regularly around the table from all different areas, whether it be management company, brand, suppliers, lenders, you name it, it's always a rewarding look. It's a two-way, right? So we're giving our time and experience in what we're seeing in our business, but at the same time, for me, it's always rewarding because you're getting that broader perspective of what's going on in the industry. So I think it's a vital piece of what we do as industry leaders, is to be active in the industry as much as you can, as they're not high-paying committee jobs.
That is true. Keith, we are going to end up running short on time, but I do want to cover a series of questions. I'm going to do it in a quick fire fashion. In a word or two, tell me one thing about your leadership that has gotten better over time.
Patience.
Tell me something that has gotten worse over time.
It's gotten worse over time. I would say my technical skills have gotten worse over time. One of the things that I have learned has worked just in terms of a leadership standpoint is being able to do everything you ask your team to do. By way of example, if I need to do an Excel spreadsheet, I'll just do it if I have to, and I'll do it first, and then I'll show them what I mean by the format that I need. If I need to do my own PowerPoint presentations, I'll do it. If I have to do my own underwriting documents for some particular investment, I'll do it. But that said, things are starting to get AI, Copilot, they're starting to get a little bit beyond my ability to keep up with them. So,
I think you would not be alone in
yeah.
choosing that as that item. Tell me, you've been responsible for building a ton of great teams over 4 decades. What is one it factor you look for when you are looking to fill a role, something not on the resume?
Yeah, I would say that putting aside the fact that it's the hospitality business, you need to like people. I would say people who like to win.
Okay.
You've got to bring your A game every day. You've got to work hard on the field. Some days you move the ball just a little bit up the field. Some days the ball goes backwards on you. But if you've got that competitive winning mentality and style about you, I think that kind of inherent trait you can pull out, you can bring out an individual, and as long as you've got them directed the right way and feeling energized, and that the prize is there at the end, having a good competitive spirit to me is a really strong trait.
I like that a lot. As I mentioned at the start, I've known you for a long time in a lot of different roles, but I'm always delighted on the interviews to learn something about a guest that I didn't know before. What is one thing that would surprise people about you, or one misperception maybe that people who don't get a chance to get to know you up close and personal would say about you?
Yeah, that's a good introspective question. I've been told that at times folks feel like I'm not approachable, which surprises me because I feel like I'm very approachable. If you ask my kids, they would just laugh. That would be like so foreign to them. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes people said, "Oh, I wanted to come up and talk to you, but I didn't want to." I don't know why, but
No, that's so
yeah,
interesting, Keith, because I have not had that experience with you. But what you said about it being a really introspective thing is that we are not always seeing as we see ourselves, or even as others see us. As you
yeah,
look back on 21-year-old Keith in college, and knowing maybe what your dad had done, or knowing a little bit about the hospitality industry, what is something you would tell yourself then that you either know now that would make your path easier, or might just help you if you had known it earlier in your career?
yeah. Fortunate that our youngest son works for us. He's a hotel school grad. He works in our loyalty department. He looks like me, so when I have to talk to my younger self, I feel like I'm talking to him sometimes. And I'm constantly telling him to be patient. I think I mentioned it before, because at 26, whatever, everything should have happened yesterday. Of course, they have everything in their hands, and therefore they think they know everything. But I would say patience. And I would also say, whatever you do, in whatever capacity you're in, you're to a certain extent always leading, and just lead by example. Don't
I love it.
don't ask people to do things that you're not prepared to do yourself, or do them first yourself, and then ask people if they can do them for you.
It's interesting to me thinking about when I asked you what has gotten better over time, you said patience. And then you're like, what is something I would tell my younger self? Be more patient. I don't get that a lot. A lot of people don't tie those two together. And so I really
Yeah.
like that.
Well, it only took 4 decades for me to figure it out, so that's unusual.
So you would have fast forwarded on that one a little bit. Keep thinking
Yeah.
about the motto for It's Personal Stories, which is empowering personal success. We've talked a lot about a lot of great topics today. What is one piece of final advice you would leave our listeners with?
Yeah, look, I think through the course of our conversation, it's come up a couple times thematically. And again, it's a bit of a common statement, but change does create opportunities. When events they don't determine your future. It's how you respond, right? And change will always occur in all different forms and fashions. Sometimes it's pretty close to you. Sometimes it's not as close to you, but it's how you react to it. That will dictate the outcome.
embracing change. I love it. You've certainly shown a lot of resilience and success from having done that throughout your career.
Thanks.
Keith, I appreciate so much. It's wonderful to see you again. I appreciate you joining us. I thank you for sharing both your personal journey, but a lot of your leadership insights as well. To our audience, we know you have a lot of ways to choose to spend your time, and we thank you for spending it with us. And head on over to itspersonalstories.com to hear from other hospitality industry leaders who have likewise shared their personal stories and their leadership insights. But Keith, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. Great to see you again. We don't see you out and about as much anymore, so nice to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.